I'm Fitchett. Welcome to the Basis Project. And we're in a beautiful location in Somerset.
Mm-hmm.
That's east of Devon, or north of Devon.
North of Devon.
Now, I've got somebody who was in Devon last week, and she's fortunate that wherever she goes, she is in a zone of, is in a zone of no signal.
Same here.
Oh,
There's not really any phone signal here.
that's probably why I got lost coming.
Yeah.
So this is a beautiful environment. So what brings, in this crisis that we've got in 2025, things aren't looking good. In the meantime, what's your background? And why should anybody pay attention to a single word you say?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, there's a question. Nobody should, really. But I do have a few interesting things to say, so maybe worth listening to. I am a plant spirit healer, a shamanic teacher and an author. And my day job is that I am a plant spirit healer, and so I cleanse people's energy fields, and so I help to release and repattern people's energy fields to help them in their healing process, to help them energetically. I'm the founder of the School of Natural Esoterics, where I teach people how to work with plant spirits and how to work in the unseen realms. And I run the Plant Consciousness
That is very
Apothecary.
interesting.
Yeah.
Continue.
I teach people how to work in the spirit realms. And so I've really had my eye on what's been happening over the last, particularly the last 5 years, when really strange things started happening in the spirit realms, in the astral planes. And so I've really helped people to overcome the effects of the trauma of the last 5 years, particularly vaccine trauma and other, related trauma to what's been going on. And also helping people to reconnect to nature, because at the end of the day, that is where the healing is. So, yeah.
This is extremely important, and the other thing is that we're dealing with solutions. So I know some other people who talks to plants. I talk to plants. I'm going to come up with the obvious one. It's when they talk back to you that they lock you up.
They've not locked me up yet.
There are other researchers in this field. I mean, a lot of the emphasis on all this is extraterrestrial and aliens and out there. But we are surrounded by beautiful nature here, and it's talking to us all the time. And we've got some pussycats over there, very attentive. They talk to us as well. And there are other people I know who talk to the animals, and they talk back. Horse whisperer, for instance, but she's not. She says she's not a horse whisperer. I won't name her, but they will talk to her, and she knows that when the rider changes its language, when you have a different rider, the horse's language will talk. Will switch with the language of the rider.
Yeah.
So this is very important for us to pay attention to. So could you go into that in greater depth, please?
Yeah, sure. So I don't communicate with animals per se. I mean, I have started, I did do an animal communication course and started kind of communicating with the cats, but then I realized that actually cats just like to boss you around. So I thought that's not a good idea.
Now,
I'll stick to plants.
On that subject, I have noticed a lot of cats getting involved with blogs. People are doing blogs. Simon Parkes is one. There's others with, for instance, Stuart Sverdlow, and their cats are getting into the shot and paying attention.
Yeah, they know a lot of what's going on. They've got an opinion on what's going on around them. So yeah, they're.
In fact, with the horse whisperer that I was talking about, who's not a horse whisperer, she was there to heal a horse, find out what's going on. It was the cat who told her about the horse.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Because the cat spoke to her, she was able to speak to the horse to say that the owner's not selling you. Yeah. And that made the horse happy, so everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah, they are amazing creatures, absolutely. But my kind of communication with nature really, I stick to the plants and trees. It seems to kind of work for me a lot better. But I work with the plant spirits, and so I form a co-creative relationship with them. And so when you're communicating with plants and trees, and the plant spirits, they communicate with you how you understand them, how the realm of kind of understanding that you've got. So your cultural background, your spiritual background. And so just like the horses changing their, their kind of language, if you like, depending on their rider, the plants are very similar. In that, so when I first started communicating with plants, I was studying a master's in Buddhism. And so I was meditating a lot, and then discovered that I could, meditate with plants and then have this kind of like dialogue with them. And I found that they would be teaching me in Buddhist concepts. And so they were helping me to understand and to experience on a heart level what I was actually learning at a mental level. So they helped me to really deepen my appreciation and understanding and experience of those Buddhist concepts, and of course reality. They help us to understand reality on a much deeper level, because what plants do is that they reflect our consciousness back at us. So they're reflecting ourselves back to us so that we can see ourselves clearer. They will reflect back to you and therefore speak to you in your language, because you're unique. So what they're reflecting back to you is uniqueness. And they can, and even when it comes to perceiving the plant spirits, so the more you work with plants, the more you consume plants, the more psychic you become, because you cleanse your energy field, you kind of move through blockages, and so the more kind of natural you become as a human, and so your psychic abilities just get switched back on, or kind of get cleared, if you like. And so the plant spirits will appear to you, to everybody in a different way. There's commonalities, but just say, I gave you some plant medicine, and I had some plant medicine or an essence of a plant, and that plant spirit would appear to you in a different way as it would to me, but there would be commonalities. It's just that how we interpret things through our conscious mind, through the filters of our background, through the filters of our phenotype, then the plant spirit, we will interpret the energy of a plant spirit in a different way. And so we like to anthropomorphize, and so sometimes we will see plant spirits as kind of like embodied beings on the inner planes. Or sometimes they just appear as kind of like light with sacred geometry within them. So they appear in different ways. But yeah, there is this thing that, then nature is fluid. And so, because the plants and the animals don't have such a fixed sense of self like we do, then they are able to communicate with anybody, because they're able to kind of meet them at their level.
Well, the basic question is, how do you communicate with them in the first place? What happened that you got that communication? How did that happen? What's involved?
Well, for a long time I lived in the Middle East, in the desert, and I was really unhappy. And going back to my mum's in France, I realised, and getting there and feeling so alive and wondering what's going on. Like, I felt ill and depressed in the desert, and then suddenly I feel alive, and I realised it was nature, and that I really miss nature, and I'm a being from a place where we have 4 distinct seasons, and I wasn't kind of experiencing that in the desert, so I was getting quite depressed. So then, by the by, I kind of, I'm kind of studying and doing my spiritual practice, etc. And then I was organising an event in London. I used to use my corporate skills to organise more spiritual events in London that I was interested in. and somebody came to the event and asked me if I'd ever heard of plant medicine, and he invited me, and I hadn't actually, and he invited me to experience iboga, which is an African plant, and it's usually used to help people with addictions, but they were kind of getting together a group of people who were already on their spiritual path to see what the effect or the experience people would have of this plant. And it was quite extraordinary. It really shifted my perspective on reality, and I just sat and had this conversation with this plant spirit for an hour. It was just like phenomenal. I'd never experienced anything like it.
How did that experience happen? I mean, what were you experiencing visually or perceptively?
It was with my eyes closed and on the inner planes. So I could, if I closed my eyes, I could see
what the inner planes are relative to the astral, or what do you mean by that?
Okay, so we've got two different distinct levels of consciousness. We've got one that's very yang, so it's projected outwards, and our five senses are perceiving what we think is external to us, and then we've got those five senses that are face inwards, and that's the more yin consciousness, and that's our inner planes. That's the realm of the imagination. That's the realm of our creative imagination, the creative life force, and of course that's linked into the astral plane. So the astral plane is the realm of imagination, and we've got our own realm within that. But we're also connected to the greater collective astral consciousness as well. And so it's within the astral layers of consciousness that we meet the plant spirits. That's the easiest place for us to meet and communicate. But we can actually, and bearing in mind that the imagination is not what we're told it is. The imagination is our ability to obviously create, absolutely create thought forms, but also to open our it's a bridge to the spirit realm as well. And so it's just working out, and that's part of spiritual practice, working out what is you, what are you creating from your own habits, your own habitual patterns, and what is actually not you, or what is both you and not you. And so it's quite a process and part of all of our practice, actually determining what is us and what is not us. And so that's where the plant spirits interact with us, and through meditation, I think I was just kind of like naturally able to see quite well on the inner planes.
What kind of meditation?
I studied Buddhist meditation, so primarily single-pointed shamatha meditation, and also Mahamudra, which is a form of shamatha, but a much more kind of subtle version of it. I studied that and practiced that for many years. And actually, I was practicing it as a child before I even realised what it was until years later.
Explain what those two different types of meditations are. What's the difference, and what allows you to get involved with these other natural realms of intelligence and life?
So shamatha, actually I recommend shamatha meditation to a lot of people, and it's called single-pointed meditation. So we choose something to rest our conscious awareness on. So it could be a point on the body, it could be an image in the mind, but we choose something to hold in our conscious awareness gently, without grasping, without holding onto it too tightly, and just resting our awareness there without moving it onto anything else. Obviously, in the beginning, your mind is going to wander, so you just have to catch your thoughts and bring it back. And naturally, thoughts are going to arise. You're not going to stop your thoughts. That's not the point. But the point is to be able to hold this point of consciousness, this whatever you've chosen to rest your awareness on. And then what that does is that really centers all of your energy. It like brings, you know, we get very scattered mind, particularly the modern mind is very scattered. We are pulled in so many directions. We've got so many pieces of information coming at us through the tech that it fragments our mind. And so what single-pointed shamatha does is it focuses the minds and therefore brings our energy and centers and grounds our energy. And centralizes us, so that then we're able to kind of have a mind that's much more powerful and much more, it's training the mind basically. And so then Mahamudra meditation is taking that one step further, where you don't have anything to rest your awareness on, you just rest the awareness on awareness. And so
you laugh there, what do you mean by that?
So you basically don't do anything. You just being, okay, and so try just being and not following any of those thoughts that arise. Just seeing them as things that you can observe. And so what these meditations do is they bring a spaciousness between you and as the observer and your thoughts, and you recognize that you are not your thoughts, and so they don't drag you along as easily. And so you can just watch them arise and leave with consciousness, without being unconsciously pulled along with them. So you choose what to think about if you choose to think. But Mahamudra is that you're not going to necessarily think, you're just going to observe. And so it's a really
What's the difference?
Deep. Sorry?
When you are observing, is that you receiving information by observing? But when you're saying you're thinking, you're putting something out to you.
Well, thoughts come in different ways. So so when you're thinking something, just say I'm looking at the camera, then my mind will label camera, and some people actually have a running commentary on what they're saying, so they'll say camera in their mind. And so it's about kind of calming that all down, that we don't have to label everything, we don't have to grasp everything or put meaning into everything. It's just taking a step back from those thoughts, those habitual thoughts, and just allowing yourself to just experience the present moment without imputing anything onto the present moment, any labeling, any meaning, any kind of judgment. And so, it's just about experiencing what is.
So how does a person engage in this by settling their mind? We get so many distractions and things. So how would you do this in a quiet place on a retreat somewhere? Or?
Well, I wouldn't recommend starting with Mahamudra, that's for sure. But for shamatha meditation, what people do, and Thich Nhat Hanh was the most amazing teacher for this, who I did spend some time with, is walking meditation. So because our mind is so active, in our modern mind is so active, and it's like this untamed monkey, walking or doing some kind of movement meditation is the most beneficial.
I mean, walking helps,
but walking,
because you are circulating the blood around the whole body and moving things around.
But consciously walking. So as you're placing your feet on the ground, consciously feeling the ground, walking slowly, walking through your garden, really attentively and consciously feeling where you put your feet, observing what's around you, and just being in the present moment without scattering your thoughts and wondering what time it is, what you're cooking for dinner, blah, blah, blah. That just being in your body and doing something with your body. So it could be dancing, it could be something else, but just to focus on being in your body and the movement that's going on with that. And that's a really great place to start.
At what age did this happen for you? Did it mean something? What set the ball rolling? And I have to say, when you say about the Far East, you're talking about
Middle East.
Middle East, that's the jinn. Their belief system there talks about jinn, energy beings in the deserts. Did you have a meeting with anything like that or engage?
No, not
Did they
then.
turn up?
No, I think I was quite shut down when I was there because I was depressed. I actually didn't want to be there. I didn't like the place at all. So So no, and then so I moved to India and decided that
Well,
actually
India's a big place.
it is. Yeah, I moved to Goa, and for a
What
while.
brought you to there rather than elsewhere? I mean, there's so much in India.
Well, I had business that I needed to finish in the Middle East, in Dubai. So I moved to Goa because it's only a 2-hour flight, and I loved Goa. So I just lived there for a couple of years, and really enjoyed that culture actually. Although it was a bit of a challenging place to live in the end. But then I went up to the Himalayas and spent 6 months up there studying at the Dalai Lama's temple, studying other.
Let's go up to the Himalayas and do that. How does this happen? I mean, this is just amazing. You just go up to the Himalayas instead.
Yeah, why not? I think for me, freedom has been a really important part of my whole life. And so that's been like my fuel and my driving force to actually to do what I need to do in my life, and what to allow me to listen to my heart. And so yeah, I knew that I didn't want to be in that kind of corporate world anymore. It was making me sick. It was making me depressed. So I moved to India to find myself, as they say. And I took a few years off and just meditated. Studied healing practices in the Himalayas with some great teachers, studied Buddhist concepts, etc. Did meditation retreats, silent retreats, and then went to Italy to study a master's in Buddhism, because being a student in Tuscany, I thought that would be fab.
I wouldn't necessarily think Italy's a good, strong Catholic country like that.
Studying Buddhism in a Catholic country had its issues. You are absolutely correct.
So how did that play?
Well, it was a little village in Tuscany where there's this beautiful Buddhist institute, a Lama Tsongkhapa Institute, and I studied a master's degree in association with Pisa University, and it was a practicing one. So we practiced a lot of meditation, month-long meditation retreats. So I was there for 2 years, and it was semi-monastic. So there were monks and nuns, and I was taught by Tibetan Rinpoches and lamas, and we studied the 10 core texts of the Gulug tradition, which is the Dalai Lama's school of Buddhism, because there are 5 different schools. And so it is quite a scholastic school, but my emphasis and my reason for going there was to study meditation and to understand my own mind, to understand the nature of reality, and to sort out my issues, because I knew that I was trapped in some way. I felt like I was trapped in my mind. I felt like my mind didn't work properly, because I'd meditated, and I knew this from being a child. I meditated since I was a child, even though I didn't know what I was doing. I used to meditate in bed. And so I knew, so it's obviously kind of karmic or within me. And so being at the Buddhist Institute, it was like I was home. I just felt so at home there. I was reading these Buddhist texts, and it was just like I was just remembering them. I didn't necessarily need to study them. I was just remembering them as I read them. So I studied that, and then decided that actually, as I was running out of money, I needed to earn some money. So decided to use my skills of organising big scale events about stuff that I thought people would be interested in. And I'd been getting into lucid dreaming, out of body experiences, that kind of thing, because they're all part of Buddhist practices, tantric practices. And I taught myself to lucid dream, and that's what I wrote my thesis on. And so I thought, why not organise a big event in London about it? And so it was called Gateways of the Mind. And hundreds of people turned up.
Explain all that. And when did it happen? What was the whole setup of all that?
What do you mean?
Well, putting things on in London, there's lots of pluses and minuses about that. It's expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's expensive, but I've got quite good...
What sort of year are we talking about here?
Oh, God. It was probably around 2013, 2013.
So not exactly a long time ago.
Not the longest time ago,
well,
no.
I moved house out of London around about 2013. That's probably why it happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Yeah, it was expensive and actually prohibitive in the end, really, to run the events. But when you start something in London, it's such a progressive place, or it used to be, that things would grow really quickly. And so the event was a great success. And you know that whatever you put into London, there's going to be an audience for it, because there's people practicing every form of spirituality.
You're hitting a road running. How did you get all the contacts and things? Did you mention Lucy? Did you?
Yeah, Lucy.
Well-known troublemaker.
Yeah.
But I mean, how did you hit the ground running? You're coming from
good old
a temple somewhere, and then you're suddenly hitting.
Because the spiritual communities are not that big, so you find the kind of the spiritual outlets, and good old-fashioned flyers and adverts really work. So you just find those. The magazines and the shops where you can put your flyers.
Mention the magazines. I mean, Nexus or whatever.
Yeah, Nexus. Yeah, they sponsored the event.
Right.
Yeah, and so I had adverts in Nexus magazine, Caduceus magazine, Kindred Spirit, I think. I can't remember. It was such a long time ago, but they're the ones that, off the top of my head. And flyers in Watkins, and there's a whole circuit of spiritual shops in London that you can put your flyers in.
Particularly for people who aren't in this part of the world. I mean, that's a heck of a thing to do, to get that done.
Yeah, but it worked. And so just, I've got a background I had a background in events and marketing, so.
Oh, well, that doesn't.
Yeah.
The old background in events and marketing, that's how you did it. Oh, well, the old background in events and marketing, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
So I had this vision of, you're sitting meditating in a Buddhist temple in Italy, and then suddenly you're doing event management in London.
Well, it was like that, yeah.
Wow, that old background in event management
comes in handy.
It just came. Yeah. So this is fascinating. I mean, this started with ball rolling and so forth. So continue.
Yeah, and then it was like I said earlier, it was at that event somebody came and just asked me if I'd tried plant medicine, and I hadn't, so invited me to a ceremony.
What do we mean by plant medicine?
Well, plants, kind of entheogenic plants or psychoactive plants. And I hadn't, so, apart from obviously mushrooms, we have those beautiful little mushrooms, magic mushrooms in this country, which obviously most of us had taken in our childhood or youth, and not childhood, but youth. And
youth with an F?
Youth, yeah. But obviously there's a whole world of healing plants out there, and they're one form of them. But once I'd experienced those plants, then I wanted to find out what my own native plants from my own country had to say. And so that's when I was like, right, okay. So what I did was I organised a big event in London called... Another one. Called,
let's go into these events. Let's get into the detail.
So I organised an event called Plant Consciousness. So it was about the conscious intelligence of plants. Okay, so this was before there was, the great work by Suzanne Simard. Before there was the, I think it's called Peter.
Explain those works so that people who don't know.
Okay, so Suzanne Simard talked about the relationship that trees have with each other. And then, there's a whole research on the mycorrhizal network. So this was before then. So people thought I was a bit nuts, but we had 350 people turn up to the event. So, and people were just saying, thank goodness that, there is something where I can speak to like-minded people, because my garden's speaking to me, or I've always communicated with a particular tree, or, that people were getting into shamanism.
Really get into this, because this is fascinating. I've met other people who can do this.
So there was, there's been a rise of shamanism in this country for a long time, and we've also got a history and a heritage of animism. The Celtic and Druidic traditions in this country are animistic. So we know that there's spirit in everything, and particularly the plants and trees. We've got a history of witchcraft in this country. These are very strong kind of energies that run through the land, and therefore run through the people of these lands. And so when you talk about the intelligence of plants and trees, it's not something that's going to be really out there for a lot of people. It's actually quite an acceptable thing. It might sound out there for a lot of people, I get it, and it did at that time. But now that a lot of this research has been done, more scientific research, then people are a bit more open-minded about it. However, the perspective that I come from is not scientific per se, more spiritual science, because I'm working and have a co-creative relationship with the plant spirits themselves. So I'm not...
That's very important, co-creative.
Yeah.
This is very important.
Yeah, because I'm not, the plant spirits have a choice whether to work with me. I don't, the old dark magicians of old or the dark witches of old would bind these plant spirits to them to do their bidding, and that's not what I'm talking about.
No.
What I'm talking about is entering in a relationship. It's symbiotic. It's a relationship that's co-creative. So there's an agreement there, and so my spirit team is allowed to leave whenever they like. But they choose to stay.
Explain a spirit team. When you mention these, explain them. This is fascinating.
Okay, so when I do the clearings for my clients' energy fields, it's not necessarily me doing the work, and so it's my spirit team. So I have a team of plant spirits, not all plant spirits, but mainly, who each have a particular role and job to clear, cleanse, repattern, purify, remove, release, whatever is found, whatever I find in somebody's energy field. And so, by spending long periods of time with individual plant spirits, I've got to know them at a really deep level. I know exactly how they feel. I know exactly what they can do. Not exactly, because a plant spirit has a really, really broad repertoire of healing capabilities. And I don't necessarily need to know all of them, but you could spend a lifetime with one plant and perhaps not deeply know it, not know it in its entirety. But I know the plant well enough that when it is in my periphery, when the spirit is in my periphery, I recognize it. So I'm not duped into thinking it's something else, because as we know, in the spirit realm, there are many, many types of beings in the spirit realm, and many beings that want our energy, want to be embodied, and so we have to be really careful what we actually connect to in the spirit realm.
How does a newcomer to this understand that, or to somebody who isn't aware of that? How do you distinguish all that?
Well, the beauty about working with plant spirits is the plants and trees are here in the physical realm with us. So you only have to go and sit under that oak that's behind you to experience what it feels like to sit in an oak, what it feels like to be within the energy field of an oak. What does it do to your energy field? Well, it will ground you, obviously. It will make you feel grounded. It will clear your energy field. It will make you feel protected. And so it's about spending time with the plants to understand how they make us feel individually, because I could go into that oak tree and have a bit of a different experience because I'm a unique person and so are you. And
now, you mentioned it going into the oak tree, so the oak trees are coming to you, you're going into its energy field.
Yeah, so as you approach the oak in the physical world, an oak tree or any plant or tree has an energy field. We all have an aura, all have an energy field, and so do the plants and trees. And so it's having different practices and ways of being able to sync our consciousness and kind of relax our consciousness so that we can feel into the more subtle realms and feel into those vibrations and how our energy field is interacting with the oak or the plant, how it's interacting with the plant's energy field. So yeah, there's just, people come here and spend 3 days just talking to one plant, and we do lots of different exercises to get people into different states of consciousness so that they can open their hearts, open their minds, and receive this kind of communication with the plants. And quite often that comes with healing, it comes with insights about themselves, it comes with releasing toxicities, it comes with understanding what happened to them when they were younger perhaps, and really helps people to open up to a greater consciousness and to that interconnectedness. And so yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful practice.
Okay, back to the conferences. That's in the public domain. So
Yeah.
how have these evolved, and what sort of response did you get with them? And are they available for looking at?
They used to be, but not anymore. I used to have them on a TV channel, but called Wisdom Hub. But
Wisdom Hub?
yeah, but it is no longer. I think I've got a few on my Vimeo channel still. But
I mean, maybe they're hanging about somewhere.
they are. I've got
Do
them.
tell people about them, because maybe somebody
They're not
could-
online, but they're probably on my Vimeo channel. Yeah,
And your Vimeo channel is?
I can't remember.
No, but when you say
I've not
these
looked at. I know.
Tell us what they are, just so.
Yeah,
later.
sure. Yeah, I can't remember because it must be Vimeo Plant Consciousness Vimeo channel. And so what I did was that I knew that I wanted to train in understanding the plants at this deeper level. And so one of the things is that, I didn't have a great deal of money. I was a student, but I organised this event. And then I researched all the people from around the world that I wanted to invite to this event and that I might potentially want to train with. And then invited them to speak at the event. And we had this 2-day event at Regent's University, and we had Pam Montgomery from the US, who's a plant spirit healer. We had Sir Julian Rose actually speak at that first event, who you probably know.
Well, for those who don't, do tell us about it.
Well,
Generally speaking, when you say something,
yeah,
give a little.
Julian Rose was one of our first organic farmers. So we had speakers from different realms that are associated with the intelligence of plants. So whether it was kind of activism, whether it was shamanism, whether it was witchcraft, whether it was plant spirit healing, the scientific realm, the psychedelic realm. So we had speakers from all of these different kind of like these different disciplines, and throughout, and we just all kind of it was fantastic. So I ran that for 5 years, and
That's no mean feat.
Yeah, we ran
You always
it for
do
5
it once,
years.
but having repeat business is always a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we had like over 300 people at each event, and it was good fun. And of course, then I was able to see like, right, okay, I know this person and I want to train with this person. So then I spent 5 years with Pam training and learning from Pam Montgomery, hosting her trainings over here, and I trained in plant spirit healing from her. And then, by the by, I ended up moving back here to the British Isles and into Wales, and running Plant Consciousness, organising it from there. But that's where I met one of my teachers, Michael Dunning, who is the yew shaman. And so he'd spent a long time with the yew tree, and a long, long time living under a yew tree, and it completely changing his life and downloading to him a lost body of work called the Yew Mysteries. And so I helped him he lives in America.
I'm fascinated by that. Yew trees.
Yeah.
Deep wisdom.
Deep
They were around
wisdom.
for a long time.
Yeah.
When you're saying living under one, is it like at a graveyard somewhere? Where do you get the tree?
Well, he was really sick. It's a really long story, but
Well, give us a little.
yeah, sure.
Do feel to go in with the things.
Yeah, he was really sick. I'm trying to remember and do it justice. He was very sick, and he's Scottish, and he was living in Scotland at the time. And one of his friends got him to go to the Whittingham yew, I believe, and which is a yew tree that's been allowed to express itself in its full kind of gesture, because usually when we see yew trees, they're in churchyards, and they cut the branches back for health and safety. And so but naturally the yew tree will kind of grow its branches down to the ground, and the branches will run along the ground, so that the yew tree becomes huge, and then new yew trees spring up around it, like different forms of itself. And so he went to a friend took him to this yew tree, and he just felt like it was really beneficial for him to be around the yew tree, and so he lived very close to it, and so he would be. So for 9 years, I believe, he spent most of his time, because he couldn't work. He spent because he was so sick, spent most of his time under this yew tree, and it healed him. And while it healed him, took him apart, put him back together again, and gave, like I said, the beings that work through the yew tree. One of the types of beings that work through the yew tree downloaded to him or gifted him this lost body of work, the yew mysteries, that he spent a long time then deciphering what he'd learned and quantifying it, researching it, and then he's actually then he trained to be a craniosacral therapist and moved to America. And so I helped to bring that body of work back to the British Isles, and we organised the yew mysteries. So I spent 5 years learning this lost body of work with him. And because I was living in Wales, where we've got the highest concentration of yew trees in the British Isles, and beautiful groves of yew trees, then I spent a lot of time with them, and then eventually moved into a house that was sat underneath a huge giant yew tree. So I got to be and with the yew tree for 4 years, and where the yew mysteries, because with the yew mysteries it's a body of work, and so you learn it and then you put it into action, and then what is the result of that, then you can, if you like, teach that. But you don't teach the yew mysteries, you don't do the course and teach the yew mysteries. It's not like that. The yew tree, you learn how to communicate with the yew tree, you learn how to be with it and work with its very unique consciousness, and you allow it to change you. And so the yew tree really strips you back down to your authentic self, removes all the masks that you've accumulated over your lifetimes, removes all those kind of karmic cycles. It's a Saturnian tree, so it's very related to karmic cycles.
What does that mean?
So it's related, all the plants and trees are related to different planets. And so we have this correspondence between plants and planets.
That's
and
very interesting, because I even was talking with somebody who could hear or understand that the coral in Europa, I think it's Europa in Saturn,
right,
was singing to the coral in Australia.
Yeah, probably.
And they were communicating.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, keep going. I love all this.
So there is this kind of like a correspondence, because how each plant, everything has a correspondence within it. Metals correspond to Venus is associated with copper, because the qualities of copper reflect the qualities of Venus, the qualities of the goddess. And so you've got these correspondences between the planets, perhaps the metals, and then the plants as well. And so certain plants will have very Venusian qualities about them. They open the heart. They help us to overcome problems with relationships, that kind of thing. And then you've got plants that are more associated with Saturn or Pluto, and these are plants that are the poisonous plants. These are the underworld plants, the initiatory plants, the plants that are associated with and have the similar qualities and energies to the qualities of those planets, Saturn and Pluto. Karma.
Now, is this some kind of thing connected with astrology, or are we talking about a whole living system in terms of the solar system and beyond?
I would imagine it's not restricted to astrology, and but astrology is a science that has evolved to help us understand it. Astrology comes from, they say that the Hermeticus says that it was created by Thoth, and that it's created to understand, or perhaps some people to say to control and create the consciousness construct within which we live today. And so, but at the very least, it helps us to understand ourselves. It helps us to understand what's happening in the world at the moment. And so it's a good kind of it's a good thing to kind of reference, to be honest. And
could you follow through on those? Something controlling us, or, Could you
Well-
follow through on those subjects? We've
Well-
got about 10 minutes left on this part.
Okay,
Maybe
so-
have a little tiny pause.
Sure. Well, there is this concept that astrology is part of, and the control system, that it's part of the matrix, if you like, within which we work. And so this theory is not new. The Gnostics talked about this and taught about this, and they said that that astrology was created by the archons. That was their kind of
Now,
terminology.
what do you
for them.
mean by the archons?
So the archons, how I've encountered the archons in recent years is that they are this kind of controlling force. They're interdimensional. They're not from this planet. And so they're like an invading or invasive kind of subnatural force on this planet. And Rudolf Steiner spoke about them and called them Seratic beings as well.
What on earth does that mean?
It's just a name that he gave them. I don't know what the interpretation of the name Seratic is. But he, and so if you look into anthroposophical healing, and even Harold Kautz talks about this, the different...
That's otherwise known as Harold Kautz Vela.
Yeah. These are the beings that are kind of part of the control system, part of the dark matrix, part of the kind of energy that wants to bring in this transhumanism agenda, part of the kind of climate change control agenda. And so they're kind of like a controlling force behind our governments, if you like, behind the authorities. And so what I found is that I didn't know about these beings at all until...
Explain that whole experience. This is really important to understand how that happened.
How what happened, sorry?
That you met the archons.
Yeah,
the archon thing.
So I...
Because there were different
yeah,
things
sure.
involved.
So
What's your experience?
And actually, incidentally, so I was fine after COVID started and we went into lockdown. You know, I was just finding a lot of off-planet beings in my clients' energy fields, and you know, a lot of ETs, if you like. And I knew about them, but I didn't really. They weren't really part of my.
What type of ETs? There's a whole pile of things spinning off.
Yeah, I know. But, okay,
No,
so
but,
I'm talking about the regressive ones. I'm talking about the toxic ones.
And they would be.
Well, they would be kind of like short greys, they would be insectoids, they would be tall greys wouldn't necessarily be in the energy field, but they would use lots of tricks to actually make you think they were. So they would kind of like project their consciousness into your energy field and
This is all big stuff.
make you think that they were in your energy field and attacking you. But they were planting, because we were all in this very unusual situation of heightened fear, then people were very susceptible to these ETs, and and I felt, and a lot of my kind of peers and teachers felt that actually the COVID, the pandemic was actually a pandemic of ETs. It wasn't actually a virus at all.
This is very important, very important. Go into it, keep going.
And so yeah, I mean, because I was finding these ETs in people's energy fields, and they were putting in eggs, they were implanting eggs in people, they were doing all kinds of experiments.
Explain all that.
They were doing all kinds of experiments on people, you know, unknowns to us, you know, unknown to them, because the ETs have such an unusual vibration that we don't recognize it. It doesn't kind of compute with people. So they just feel wrong, they feel something's not right, they feel out of touch with themselves, or they're in pain, depending on what is going on for them with these ETs. So over time, you know, and actually I went through a phase where I was finding 2 or 3 in people's energy field at one time. You know, it was quite an onslaught, and so anyway, that, you know, you can actually deal with them and send them back to their planet. Whether they probably come back, or you know, who knows? But it was so it was
what
kind
do
of
you mean
like
by deal with them?
Well, you have to get them out of.
I notice
your
you're
clients.
scratching your shoulder at the back.
Yeah, I know. You have to release them from your client's energy field. That's what your clients come to you for, you know. So you have to have techniques. So you have to have allies to do that. So of course, when I started finding them, or if I find something new in my client's energy field, no matter what it is, then I find an ally to deal with it. And so, so anyway, I had various allies to deal with them, and they would remove them. And then we would do the cleanup process, because they're very toxic and they bring all kinds of toxicities with them, including technology. So we would find implants, different implants, receivers, transmitters, all those kind of things in.
Now, when you're saying
etheric,
implants, so these are energetic implants.
Energetic
in the
implants.
They're not things you could see it on X-ray.
No, they're energetic implants. Some people could feel them if they were in their body, though, and so we'd have to remove them. And over time, once the vaccine started rolling out, then things really changed. Then I started finding very strange entities and beings in people's energy fields.
And this is for entertainment purposes only, what you're saying.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't entertaining, that's for sure. It was actually quite unnerving. But I was finding these entities in people's energy fields, and across that was when the vaccine started rolling out, and it wasn't really. It was about 5 months I'd been studying these beings, and I couldn't work out what they were, but they were really nasty. They were really no communication with them. They were really kind of very dark. Or
did you not pick up communication because they were communicating at a different level? This is very important.
Well, they just didn't want to communicate. They just wanted to be us. That was the message that I got all the time. There was no dialogue like you get with, say, demonic beings. These were like beings that they just wanted to...
Demonic beings are, of course, basically terrestrial. They're us, they're in part of
We create demonic beings, yeah. We create them from trauma. We create them from traumatic experiences. And so they live in this lower astral realm. And so they're kind of... but they're more kind of, so they're made from kind of very animalistic qualities. And so you can dialogue with them because they're sentient and kind of similar and close to our level of consciousness. But with these particular beings, it was much more difficult to communicate with them. And the only kind of feeling I got from them was that they wanted to be us. So anyway, I was watching a really weird series called The Basis Project, and with Harold Kautz-Vella, and he named all of these beings and explained them all. And I just happened to come across the video. I can't remember where I found it, or somebody sent it to me. And I was like, wow, he explained everything that I was finding in my client's energy field, and explained what they were called, how they operated, how they worked, how you can remove them. And so even though I worked in a different way, it was just such a relief to find somebody who knew this as well. And then since then, I've heard a lot of, it's been coming up a lot. People are really starting to become aware of these particular entities. And then I discovered also Thomas Mayer's work. He is an amazing healer from the anthroposophical methodology of healing, of spiritual science, the Rudolf Steiner school. And so, and he also was talking about these entities and the detrimental spiritual and energetic effects of the COVID vaccine. And these beings and entities that were associated with them. And so I learned a lot from what he had to say. And he brought out a book as well. And
what's the book?
The book is called The Spiritual Consequences of the COVID Vaccine by Thomas Mayer.